why I talk like this. If you're local like me, we call yats. We say, where yats? And because we also say, who dat? Who dat gonna beat the Saints? Okay. Okay, we talk about a lot of things. But now, New Orleans, like parts of Florida, or like the Netherlands, is nothing more than a reclaimed swamp. There's nothing hard for many miles. There's no hills for many miles. We're surrounded by the Mississippi River about 10 blocks away, Lake Pontchartrain a few miles away, swamps, bayous, and marshes. So we're surrounded by water. Why did you say we're surrounded by seafood? Okay, so it wasn't to the early 1900s we put in drainage, pumping stations, canals, and levees. For the first 200 years, we hugged the curve in the river. That was the high, dry ground. But by the 1920s, we had pretty much done. We started going away from the river towards Lake Pontchartrain several miles away. So today, the closer you live to the lake, the newer the neighborhood. The closer you live to the river, and the closer French Quarter, the older neighborhood. Then we have suburbs like everybody else. Okay, see, already you know a lot more than I knew before I became a tour guide. So the cemetery was built 80 years before drainage. So before drainage, you try to bury somebody 6 feet under, you put in the casket in a puddle. Now, we always had in-ground burial, even in the oldest cemetery on the edge of the French Quarter from 1789. But we didn't have much of it. If they did bury people, the ground was a shallow grave, and the buildup was on the top, like knee-high or waist-high. The buildup, so the casket wouldn't pop out of the ground. So from here you see just above ground burial. There's another problem. Living in a swamp was not a healthy thing to do. We had a lot of people dying of yellow fever, cholera, malaria, mainly yellow fever. Sometimes people die and faster to bury. So not only bury above ground, but as you notice, see all the names on the tomb? The one with the flowers? We reuse the tombs. We might have 40, 50 people buried there. Not everybody can see, but you know.
Yeah, we know.
Okay, what I mean is they got names on the front, but they also have names on the right side.
Okay.
They also, I can see that. See the names on the right side? They might have names on the left side, the back side. Now the tomb might not be 190 years old, but maybe it's 140 years old. They family owned. Not this one, I'll come back to that. That's a group tomb. That's actually most people buried. With a group of people, that's something in common with. But these are all family owned. Now the names might change because of marriage. But the flowers, which are probably artificial, means that somebody about my age is holding the deed, which has been passed from generation to generation. And that's a family going back 4, 5, 6 generations. But y'all want to know, how does that work? You got room for 2 caskets, top and bottom, like a bunk bed. The 2 most recent people are in the caskets for as long as possible. So you're buried in the casket, they put you in the top, the casket was at the top, has to move to the bottom. Now the casket on the bottom, between top and bottom, has hopefully been inside for a good while. Because when a third person dies, the casket on the bottom is going to be taken out and open up. That's when I look at the faces. They open the casket up, they put like a sheet on the top, and they flip it over. Whatever bones or remains are left are going to go back inside the very bottom. Inside and below the ledge, below the second casket, is an open pit for the bones, for the remains. There, they're going to break that even faster as they're now exposed directly to the heat. Not this half of the year, the other half of the year. If you've been here for a few days, well, I was dressed like you are. You know, I mean, it was in the 70s, right? It was 75 degrees just a couple of days ago. Well, my point is, but half of the year, about half of the year, almost half of the year, it's 95 degrees. Yeah. So if it's 95 degrees and the sun is beat down on that tomb, inside of the tomb, it's going to get to be 140, 150 degrees. So if you bury above ground in New Orleans, it's like a slow, natural cremation. And above ground tombs like an oven or crematorium, or like a crock pot.
Crock pot.
I can say oven all day, nobody reacts. Crock pot, oh God. Imagine being a crock pot for 20 years. There ain't much left. So, from the 1800s, or even 1900s, on the bottom, it's ashes to ashes, like a compost pile. And they might, well, I don't want to get too many details. If you got questions, fine. Eventually things break down. casket's going to go to about here, and the remains go to the back. And the last one, that's back to the mold shed. Okay, most of the tombs again falling apart. You had weeds growing out of them. They haven't been used for decades. People have died out and moved on to other cities, and they haven't been used here. Not many people know this family back 190 years or 140 years. Now, supposedly, down they built this little house. The people run the cemetery are going to run the tours. Like they do with the oldest cemetery at the edge of the French Quarter, St. Louis #1. Anybody took that tour? You did, but you know what I mean? You got to pay now.
Yeah.
It used to be they didn't have to pay, but anyway. Well, they finished the house a year ago, so we'll see. The cemetery's been closed for 4.5 years. I don't know if they ever got it. Kind of frustrating. Okay, so most of them are not being used, but over on the left you see 3 tombs that are still being used because of the flowers. The one on the left, you see real flowers, which aren't going to last. So somebody just came. So when do people come? Like other places, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas, Easter, but mainly All the Saints' Day, November 1st, the day after Halloween. Now Halloween in New Orleans is like mini Mardi Gras, the whole month of October. And we also decorate for Halloween. Okay, see what else? He's gone in every direction, and he had this big smile, and everybody loved tuba facts. And when he died a few years later, several years later, I went to his jazz funeral, which is enormous. Everybody loved him. But these are the exceptions and not the rule. This neighborhood, unlike the French Quarter, did not go downhill. The French Quarter was a total slum for 50 or 60 years until the 1930s. Chicken coops in the windows, dirty longhand between the streets, until a committee was formed to save the French Quarter. It's gradually gotten better and better. Okay, but this neighborhood, going back to before the Civil War, has always been a prime neighborhood. So very few of the houses were ever chopped into apartments, which today are probably condominiums. So these two are the exceptions. 80 to 90% are still single-family residents. That White House across the street, which we'll talk more about in a minute,
Wow.
was in the same family for 140 years, and they were not the original owners. And now they got new owners. Okay, let me come on this side. Okay, now this house. This woman who lives here, her name is Dottie Brennan. And she lived with her sister Ella Brennan. And as we, you might have seen a picture of her back over by where we started the tour. Ella Brennan was considered the matriarch of the Brennan's family. If you would ask Emerald Godse who helped him kick it up a notch, he'd tell you Ella, Miss Ella. But she's passed away. But now her sister Dottie's still here. So it's Ella's daughter and Dottie's daughter that run the restaurant. And Miss Dottie still gets room service twice a day. For lunch and for dinner. What do you want? We'll bring it to you. And there's a great documentary a few years ago, nominated for Academy Award, called Ella Brennan Commanding the Table. It's out there in TV world. Really very good. If you're a foodie at all, you enjoy it. They did a complete renovation, restoration, paint job. Inside and out, looks beautiful. A woman lives here with her dog.
A dog?
She had 2 dogs, but one of them died. One person. She lives here with a dog. She's been here about 20 years, but now, from what I've been told, she wants to sell the house, move back where she grew up, where she's got family and friends, and I guess retire. Now look how big it is.
It's massive. Yeah,
Now,
it's
let me
big
add one more thing before I tell you the price. Y'all can frame up a price. Okay, but in the French Quarter and the Guard District, when they're really old, they might have inside some combination of crystal chandeliers, marble mantles, Italian frescoes, handmade medallions, handmade moldings, ceilings 12, 14 feet high, and walls maybe 16 inches thick, like that house there. The house on the corner of the walls are double thick. This house has everything but the Italian frescoes. And the price?
$3.5 million.
How much?
$3.5 million?
That's pretty good.
Oh.
I thought you would have said more, but you live in it. I'm kind of assuming because we have some international people maybe, but Homer Plessy, the landmark legal case, Plessy versus Ferguson, 1892, separate but equal. Had to come from New Orleans because of a unique black history. Yeah, French-speaking, Catholic, voodoo, but a lot more than that. The men coming here from like Senegal or Haiti, they were master builders. They often built the plantations, the mansions, the bricklayers, the carpenters, the furniture makers. In New Orleans, the slaves got the day off on Sundays. They could go there, known as Congo Square, right outside the French border. They could sell their crafts to purchase their freedom. Really? Or rent themselves out for the day. Very few white people could afford slaves. Less than 25% could afford slaves. But if you had that much money, if you were that wealthy, could afford slaves, you could also afford for your teenage son or nephew to take on a mistress of mixed blood for 8 or 10 years until the boy becomes a man and is in a financial position to ask for his white fiance's hand in marriage, who has not been let out of his sight of a chaperone until he's married. You following me? The boy gets to be 15 or 16 years old and the hormones are raging. But the white Creole girl's virtue had to be intact. So the boy takes on a mistress, but if they do have a liaison, it's been established that the woman, the girl becomes a woman, she's going to be put up in a place to live, put up in a business, coffee seller, hairdresser, dressmaker, shopkeeper. Also, the children, most importantly, are going to be taken care of, the children, which you're going to probably have, and the male children might be sent to Paris to be educated. Under the Americans, the children mixed blood, but considered additional property. The father would not even admit that he was the father, like Thomas Jefferson. So let's back up. Homo Clussy is 1/8 black. 1/8 black, 7/8 white. That means he could pass that no. He could pass for white. So he deliberately got himself arrested on the railroad car. They want to go to Supreme Court. They did. They want to go, but they lost. Separate but equal was the law of the land until 1954. But nothing really changed until the legislation of 64, 65 and the late 60s, which I know you're tired of boomers talking about, but a lot really changed in a short period of time. And by 1974, 50 years ago, we had pretty much gone from the old South to the new South. I say 1974. And like in Georgia, they went from Lester Maddox to Jimmy Carter. Georgia went from Orville Fathers to Bill Clinton and whatever. So while I grew up in segregation, long before I grew up, back when Louis Armstrong grew up, New Orleans is more integrated in some ways and in some neighborhoods than a lot of northern cities ever became. When I say integrated, not with these folks, but the second and third largest groups of people that come to New Orleans, the Irish, who worked on the riverfront as longshoremen, the Irish, and the Sicilians, who came to replace, once in slavery ended, to work on the farms and the plantations. A lot of Sicilians settled in the back of the French Quarter, and the French Quarter became known as Little Sicily, Little Palermo, and they created the Muffaletta, and Progressive Foods was born, and the poor Irish and the poor Sicilians aren't treated much better than the poor blacks, and they live in the same neighborhood. And the black neighborhoods, like where Louis Armstrong grew up, the Sicilians ran the ballrooms and the groceries, and the Jewish people, which I didn't talk about, like New York, we got Russian Orthodox Jewish immigrants in the late 1800s, and they ran the department stores and the pawn shops. And there was a Jewish family, the Konofskis, that nearly adopted Louis Armstrong and helped to raise him. And he wore a Star of David to the day he died, Louis Armstrong. But as some time passed, I think maybe lives in Austin or Los Angeles. A big success was that movie, The Blind Side. That was based on the book, The Blind Side, written by Michael Lewis, who's from New Orleans. He also wrote Moneyball, The Big Short. In real life, Michael Lewis grew up in New Orleans with the husband played in the movie by Tim McGraw. And that's how he knew the story from his friend, the real husband. Now, the real husband and the real wife live in Memphis.
Sandra Bullock's house.
A whole bunch of fast food
Guard.
outlets that they
Maybe she's
sold
here.
some years ago for 200.
Tree. Massive tree. It's got resurrection fern growing on it. Trent Reznor's house.
And he sold the house years ago to John Goodman.
Is
The
this,
actor John,
is this
John Goodman's
house?
house. Yeah, he
I've been
talks
looking
about,
for that.
Oh, you've been looking for it. John Goodman bought the house from Trent Reznor, I think 1.8 million, if that matters. Some about 10, 12 years ago. John Goodman, many years ago, as a local woman, he ended up living here full time, eventually. So in his case, when he's not working,
I don't know if he's right about
John
that.
Goodman's house.
dentals, cast iron columns, phase of the Greek Revival, not yet Victorian, transitional style of the mid-1800s. Again, you look at the secondary house, facing side street. That was originally the carriage house to the main house. Now we're going to start heading back. But first of all, this house. First of all, look at the roots of the trees. Amazing, huh? And the fence goes all the way down to the next corner. Originally, this house occupied half of the square block. This is the house that Anne Rice lived in for 15 years. And this is where the book The Witching Hour all takes place. So we'll get to the front. Looks like skulls or shrunken heads.
Yeah. Is that what
Once you,
it
heard,
is?
once you hear that Anne Rice lived here, people start to know the skulls or shrunken heads. Actually, the house has a nickname. It's called Rose Gate because the pat of roses that you see on the second level, the cast iron, it's called Rose Gate. From the columns over, Greek Revival. 12 years later, the one that's head on, so on the left, it's Italianate. Greek Revival and Italianate. On the upper left, that modern sunroom solarium would not be allowed back in the French Quarter. They would not allow something so modern, a house so old, but out here, like I'm showing you, get away with a little more or a lot more. Ionic, Doric, and Corinthian capitals. Fanciest capitals always on the top. The architecture, once you look up, and it see like the frescoes on the ceiling of the church, when you look up, you can't help but go, oh. Italianate, same architect. It's the haunted house for the neighborhood. Many years ago, they dug up the floorboards, put a new floor, they found some bones from a skeleton. No one knows where the bones came from, but everyone knows about the bones being found. So in the book The Witching Hour that Anne Rice writes, a very similar scene, she puts it to the book, she got the idea from right down the block. Now, the house was recently saved financially by a basketball player, Zion Williamson. When he signed his second contract for another $230 million, his mother said, "Z, would you buy me a house in the Guard District?" "Sure, Mom, whatever you want." He probably got a good price, a real good price. And then he saw what he got. It needs a lot of work. So they've had the signs out. You know, they're all ready to work on the house, and they put in 3 or 4 hours a month. I don't know. One day for 5 minutes as a waiter. A friend of mine owned a restaurant that was going belly up, and in between meals, Carlos Marcello and his henchmen come in to make it off he's not going to refuse. And the guy who owns the restaurant says, "There's no waiters around, Dave, go see what they want." And Mr. Marcello said, "I'll take a cup of coffee." Yeah. But yeah, talking about JFK, Carlos. There's a book back in the bookstore called Dr. Mary's Monkey. If you're real interested in all that, the JFK thing and all the, you know, that. The last place that Lee Harvey Oswald lived was on Magazine Street, like the 4900 block, before he moved to Dallas. That would have been about 6 months before. Yeah, the guy who took the pictures on Canal Street, I knew him. It's a big small town. Champion Iron Fence out of Ohio. We've got beyond wrought iron and cast iron. So it's not a modern fence, but it's something later. The next house is the same fence, but a different color.
Peyton Manning. Eli Manning grew up here with her father.
He's made more money on NIL. He's already made almost $5 million on name, image, and likeness. He's 18 now, maybe 19 years old. When he played last year, in last last year at this time, he had graduated yet from high school. But I meant he academically graduated. So he went this time a year ago to be with the team. Had to come back for graduation. It's like Peyton Manning graduated University of Texas in 3 years with honors. Both athletes never graduated. But Peyton did it 3 years. So anyway, yeah, this for Peyton and me, like, look, but Arch Manning, who's down the talk, if you're a sports fan, when he was a 14-year-old high school freshman, he had 34 touchdowns. You get a pressure this kid has.
I saw it.
Madam Butterfly. And now it's a place for wedding receptions and debutantes, piano recitals, and opera recitals. Now across the street is where they filmed the movie Django Unchained. That was Leonardo DiCaprio's house in Django Unchained. It was originally built for a guy named Joseph Maddox from New England, from Connecticut. He was a newspaper man. When they started to make fun of the Creoles, they ran him out of town. The previous owners used to invite him by tour groups until they put up for sale. When he put up for sale, went, oh no, they're not selling it. They said, well, don't worry about it. We'll invite you to the house next door. We buy it. Come see what they bought.